What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Success and happiness, I believe they're created by certain ways of thinking and acting. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Using the NLP technology, we can literally reprogram ourselves to be more functional.
How do you deal with your own personal fears and phobias?
It's a very good point, you see, because if I'm not looking after me, I can't do my job as well. I was very ambitious. In fact, I'd say I was an overachiever. And I just wanted the more status, more money, more power, more fame. That's temporarily satisfying. But that's pleasure, that's not happiness. Happiness is really the emotional backdrop to your everyday life. Instead of having to wake up each morning and go, right, how do I conquer the world? It's savoring it, it's more contentment. Love, laughter, happiness, creativity, making a positive difference to the world, loyalty, family, those sorts of things. Okay. If I can tick those boxes, then my life's worthwhile. My mission is to get as many people feeling better and more in control and basically bringing freedom as possible. That will cancel out the fear-based aggression that is presently polluting our planet, and the world will be a better place.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
So I have a bit of a confession to make. I used to listen to Paul McKenna every single morning when I would get into a black cab and make my way into the city as a banker. I would stick in his mind programming CD, and Paul would be in my head using NLP techniques to learn how to crush my goals and reprogram my mind. So I was super excited to have him in the studio. Paul's a legend. He sold over 10 million books. He's been there and done that when it comes to reprogramming your mind to make you thin, rich, happy, you name it. But he's also a ton of fun. Cracks crazy jokes, drops names like nobody's business, and talks about parties in LA. Well, don't get me started. He's also got a new podcast called The Positivity Podcast. You are gonna love this conversation. And let me ask you a question. Do you wanna change your game? Do you wanna transform your life? Well, if you do, that's what I do inside the London Real Academy. Give me 8 weeks of your life. We'll teach you how to start a business, how to start a podcast, how to publicly speak, you name it. We are in the business of completely reprogramming your life. And here's a bit more about what we do.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Paul McKenna, the most popular hypnotherapist in the world and the UK's most successful nonfiction author. Over the past 20 years, you've helped millions of people lose weight, quit smoking, overcome insomnia, eliminate stress, and increase their self-confidence. You sold 10 million books, including I Can Make You Thin, I Can Make You Rich, and I Can Make You Happy, which recently reached #1 in the UK. Paul, welcome to London Real.
Lovely to see you, Brian. Great to be here.
It's great to be here as well, and I got a bit of a confession to make.
Sure.
Because before I started broadcasting, I used to be a banker. And back in around 2006, 2007, I used to have a black cab that would wait for me outside of my flat in Notting Hill and take me into the city. And it took about 25 minutes to get into the city, and I used to play this the very first thing in the morning.
Welcome to the Mind Programming CD to make you powerfully confident and feel comfortable in yourself.
And so
Listen to this CD whilst
you
driving
started
or
my
operating
day
a machine.
Oh, wow.
almost every single day for at least a year. And this is before iPhones. So I had an MP3 player.
Yeah.
And I would strap myself into the taxi because I would close my eyes and listen to your piece. One time he hit the brakes and I fell forward. So I locked in. I told the taxi driver not to tell me a story. And then I would listen to this every morning. And I was listening to it now for the first time in many years, and I was like, wow, it's very strong. It's very well thought out. There's lots of audio. There's different earpieces going on here. And this is kind of pre-internet, pre-YouTube stuff going on here. What is going on in here? Because this was really a big signature piece of your intellectual property for a long time, and it covers a lot of the things that you teach.
Well, you know,
You sound great, too.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I was a radio broadcaster, so my dad had a great voice. I think I inherited that. I realized that if I worked one-to-one with people, I could probably work with a few thousand people in my lifetime. And because I had a background in broadcasting, I thought, hang on, if I, in those days, make cassettes, then CDs, and now, of course, it's apps and downloads, I can reach millions of people, potentially. And so I'll make, one brilliant recording and also use the technology, as you say, of talking to the right and the left brain through the stereo. And
sounds and voices, and sometimes two voices at the same time.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
So I could use all of that production that I'd learned from broadcasting and put it into something that, I hope would help people and will still be used, even after I've gone.
Wow. I mean, this very groundbreaking stuff at the time. I mean, were you always a visionary when it came to kind of technology and message? Because, again, kind of pre-internet days, you were a massive figure when it came to distributing this stuff, technology and these ideas.
I suppose, I definitely have a vision about where I want to go and what I want to do. And I suppose it began with, I went to interview the local hypnotist once when I was working in local radio, and I was interested in yoga and meditation. And
Just because you were drawn to it?
Yeah, I just found it all fascinating, and I read the odd pop psychology book. But I didn't know anything about hypnosis. And I'd had a terrible day. I had a row with my boss, broken up with my girlfriend. The people in the apartment were keeping me up. And the guy who I went to see said, rather than me tell you about it, I need to do it to you because you're stressed out. I went, knock yourself out. Anyway, half an hour later, I woke up and I felt unburdened. I felt clear-headed. And I said, can you lend me some books on this? And he lent me a book by Richard Bandler, who was later to become my most prolific teacher. And I then started visualizing what it is I wanted to have happen, because I'd read books about that.
Right.
And
this is all self-taught stuff, because you're a kid from Hackney.
Yeah, well, I was born in Hackney, but I grew up in North London. So technically I'm a Cockney, because I'm born under the sound of Bow Bells. Some of it is, I was self-taught in those early days, but I'd learned from, other people eventually. And I asked myself this question, which is popular amongst American motivational speakers. They say, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? And of course, that takes all the limiters off. And when I asked myself that question, I went, actually, I want to be a hypnotist. And I want to be on television. I want to travel the world. I want to work with all kinds of interesting people from the arts, from sports, from business. I want to be rich. I want to be famous. I want to really live an exotic life.
And that was it.
Well, not exactly. I thought, who will I have to become? And I realized I'd have to educate myself about certain things. I would have to, I'd have to to take risks. I'd have to dress differently. I'd have to think kind of differently about things. Because remember, I was a radio DJ and I was in t-shirt and jeans and playing records. And so I'd have to, learn to become a psychologist. And in the process of doing so, as we say, when you're working on a goal's working on you. And, it changed me. And it continues to. My journey continues.
And you were always drawn to people at high levels, right? You were always, you have great mentors. That's the thing when I notice about you, even people on your new podcast as well, Simon Cowell, you're always kind of rubbing elbows with top sports stars, royalty, all of these people. You must have seen them change their game, and that helped you change your game as well.
Yes, I see people, I help people, with remedial problems like you mentioned, help them to lose weight or quit smoking or overcome a phobia. But also, I've been fortunate in that a lot of high achievers have come to me and said, I'm already very good at this, but I want to be the best, so help me be even better. Now, in athletics, the difference between a medal and an also-ran is about 1% now. And so a lot of that can be a success mindset. And so I am fascinated by high achievers. As you mentioned, I'm very lucky to have some great mentors. Simon Cowell is a dear friend and a great mentor to me. Richard Bandler has been. Another chap called General Sir Graham Lamb, former director of Special Forces, brilliant minds. And lots of other, really good friends, people. Even my parents were a fantastic influence upon me. And I didn't really realize that until later in life. They gave me the values I have. And my wife is, a wonderful person. There's somebody that just, she never ceases to fascinate me. I refer to her as a Mandelbrot set because she's, like that fractal pattern that just goes eternally on and on in a beautiful way. And that is her.
How do you attract a mentor like a Simon Cowell? There's a weird relationship that happens there because obviously he kind of wants to invest in you and you want to spend time with him. And also, what does he teach you? What has he taught you over the years?
Okay, so Simon, as well as having hit records, did very well in the music business with sort of alternative acts and things like that. And my best friend at school was, he became a well-known record producer, and he said, there's a guy I got to introduce you to because I know you're going to get on. But he wants to take your self-improvement cassettes and make them, widely available. And so I went to see him in his office. And in those days, he was just in a small office. But I thought, this guy is great. And we didn't do business together, but we ended up socializing quite a bit. And I was impressed by what a clear thinker he is. So if you ask him a question, he'll tell you, even if it's not necessarily a comfortable answer that you get, he'll tell you genuinely and honestly. And also, I think we share some of the same values. He's an incredibly loyal person, very generous, very kind, and just very straightforward. In fact, the Simon that you see on television is the Simon that you get in real life. So often when I've been looking at a business decision and I've gone, should I do this or should I do that? He'll say, well, my perspective is this is the upside, this is the downside. And it's just clearly there in front of you. And also we share a similar sense of humor. We're both practical jokers. But, I've referred to him once as my older brother. And he went, not that much older though. So that's our relationship.
And he, I guess, is a guy that has a big vision and takes big risks. Are those some of the takeaways you get from him? And you are too.
Well, it's very interesting. Anita Roddick, the Body Shop founder, said to me once, I've never met a highly successful person that takes risks, unnecessary risks. They take educated, calculated risks. And so I would say that, yes, that sensible risks are what you need to take and think it through first, But yes, he's a very clear thinker. He thinks things through, and he's a good listener, right? I'm really a talker, So I like to rabbit away, and I'm more of a talker than a writer, even, I would say.
Okay, tell me what's the difference between NLP, hypnosis, and then your blend of it with what you do, because all of your books are trying to get people to overcome fears or just blockages with them mentally, but you have this weird mix. So what are the differences between those things?
Okay, so NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Neuro as in neurology, linguistic as language, a way of communicating, and programming, just as a computer has programs that it runs to do the things it does, we learn to tie our shoelaces as a kid or shake hands, and then we store the program, if you like, the habit, in our unconscious mind. So next time, we come to do it, we don't have to really think about it, just it happens automatically. And some of the programs we have support us, and some of the things we learn in early life don't support us, they're dysfunctional. And so using the NLP technology, we can literally reprogram ourselves to be more functional. Because I believe that success and happiness, they're not accidents, that sort of just randomly happen to some people, not others. I believe they're created by certain ways of thinking and acting. And so everything that you do, from boiling an egg to making $1 million, comes down to your neuro-linguistic programming. And in NLP, one of the applications we use is hypnosis. So NLP was created by Dr. Richard Bandler, Dr. John Grinder. And they studied a number of brilliant therapists and eminent thinkers, people like Gregory Bateson, Milton Erickson, widely accepted as the world's greatest clinical hypnotherapist in his day, Virginia Satir, the mother of family therapy, Fritz Perls, Gestalt, and a whole host of different brilliant minds. And they created this technology that's often been described as a sort of a psychology technology, a communication technology, but it's much more than that. Using NLP, we can help people change unwanted behaviors and problems in minutes that used to take months. But also we can model people. We can find out what it is that somebody's doing that's brilliant and codify it so that you can then teach it to somebody else in a fraction of the time that it took them to learn it. So Richard has described NLP as a curiosity, a methodology that leaves behind it a trail of techniques. And so hypnosis is just one of the things that we use in NLP to help us help people to change or to make the sort of differences they want in their life.
Okay, and all corporations and governments use NLP?
Yeah, all the corporations, the governments, the intelligence communities, they're all using NLP.
How are they using it on us? Would we know?
Politicians are definitely using it. They're using it.
Speech patterns.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
anchors.
It's largely benevolently. I mean, it's things like it's used a lot in sales, so that you create greater rapport, and you make your message more targeted, it's used in helping people to bolster that. As you used it, you use that hypnosis trance each morning to put yourself in the zone, in the right frame of mind, so that you're ready to take on your day well. It's used in politics so that people can be artfully vague in their language if they're politicians, or that they can convince you, that they can link good feelings to themselves. Both Bill Clinton and Tony Blair and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are all very adept at NLP.
Right.
Yeah. And their advisors are as well.
Is it true we're only born with 2 internal fears and everything else we just build up through the way we're brought up by our parents and by the world?
It's sudden loud noises and falling. So if something goes bang, you don't think, oh, should I be frightened? You jump, yep. And the others are learned. So if they're learned, they can be unlearned. And, we use NLP to help people, say, with phobias. I mean, years ago, it used to take psychiatrists about 6 months to cure a phobia using systematic desensitization. Now, most phobias are less than 60 minutes. And so in the same way that, technology has developed, say you had a cell phone back in the 80s, it was the size of a brick, and, all you could do was make calls on it. Now it's the size of a bar of chocolate. You can have your office on it, your record collection, you can watch television on it, and so in the same way, psych tech, psychological technology has dramatically improved in the last 20, 30 years. We've had all kinds of amazing advancements. We've just made a massive advancement in the treatment of PTSD. So what used to take us ages to cure, and PTSD is a big problem these days, particularly with war veterans and with people in the emergency services.
Do you do that work as well?
I do that work a lot. I've been involved in that work extensively. In fact, there's a brilliant new technology called havening. That's its sort of common colloquial name.
Which you've always used in your techniques, right? Havening?
I've used havening for about 10 years.
Okay.
And
what is it?
It's basically sort of psychosensory therapy. And if I can be sort of scientific just for a moment, when we get traumatized, a 100 hertz wave travels from the thalamus and phosphorates what we call the AMPA receptors. In other words, it creates a biological change in the brain. Now, when you touch here, 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 and you move the eyes laterally from left to right, you create a massive amount of delta waves. And so that dephosphorates the AMPA receptors. So this is particularly good for people that have the panic attacks, the nightmares, and the hypervigilance. And when people tell me that they've been traumatized, they can't get over it, often in minutes that can be dissolved. And in fact, there's been several studies into this, one at King's College here in London. And 7 in 10 people, 70% of the people in one session had a 180, had a significant life change. So this is an exciting new area. There's a number of these psychosensory therapies. There's one where you tap here and here and here, one where you look up and go back and forth, but my favorite is the havening.
And when you're doing the havening, are you also thinking of things and saying things? Or
there's some visualizations, something that's usually quite enjoyable, walking on a beach, or if you've got a pet, stroking a dog or playing ping pong, something like that.
Okay. The problem with PTSD, as I understand it, is that they can't reconnect and resolve some of those moments in time without having that reaction in their body.
Yes.
So they can never actually process what happened.
Yes. Well, what's happened is when somebody's been through extreme trauma, very often, particularly people who've trained to go into battle, have learned to be hypervigilant because that's a good survival strategy.
Right.
The trouble is, though, they stay in that state when they return, back home and it's safe.
Right.
And then, when they've been through a traumatic experience, really awful stuff actually, then very often their brain brings it back and they relive it for a number of different reasons. And using hypnosis, NLP, havening, we're able to reset the emotional equilibrium of a person so that they can function again.
Right. When you look at the world today, do you just see, you have so many tools in your brain, and one of my mentors says, Brian, fear is FEAR, false expectations appearing real. And most people have these phantoms in their lives that make them duck everything and hide from things and play small. But like most of your techniques are about getting over those things. Even big phobias. I've seen you on television get people over heights, their fear of heights in minutes.
Yeah.
Do you sometimes look at the world and just think, if you could just kind of embrace these fears and go through these techniques, the whole world could get 20% better?
Yes, I do. Mark Twain said famously, I've been through some terrible experiences in my life, and some of them actually happened. And, I think way too much time is spent every day worrying and catastrophizing by way too many people. But people with phobias do have a genuine fear. They're not putting it on. They actually are terrified of spiders, snakes, elevators, dentists, dogs, etc. And my mission is to get as many people feeling better and more in control and basically bringing freedom as possible. And I think that, if you look at, say, the very interesting experiments that have been done over the last few years with meditators going into, a couple of thousand meditators going into, say, Washington, D.C. And they meditate for 2 weeks, and during that time, the violent crime rate goes down massively. And this has been done over 50 times all over the world. Yeah. So it's fair to assume that if we've got more people feeling good, rather than in fear-based aggression like we have right now, because turn on the news and you're under attack, right? And there's that fantastic new book, I'm trying to think of the name of it, that Bill Gates is giving to all the grad students, that explains that really the world ain't quite as bad as we think, right. But the bad stuff, the emotive stuff sells. So, right now, people are turning on the TV and thinking that it could be the end of the world. And actually, it could not as well.
If it bleeds, it leads, they say.
Yeah.
How do you deal with your own personal fears and phobias? Because what do they say? Physician, heal thyself,
yes.
right? And so for you, I'm sure you've been in loops in your life where you're like, wait a second, I got this under control, or now I don't. How have you processed that over the years?
Well, you're absolutely right. Look, I don't have all the answers, even though people use the word guru when they refer to me. I'm
Rightfully
not.
So.
Yeah, I'm more like a psychological engineer, if you like. Oh, absolutely. I have problems and challenges. I get it wrong, or can't figure something out. So, I might call one of my friends and say, I'm really struggling with this. What do you think? And Or sometimes, I don't recognize I'm stuck. When my father died, I was in a really bad way, actually. And I was also working a lot with veterans. And, these are people who are very depressed. And I got infected with that mindset. And, one of my friends, he's a Zen master. He called me up, Genpo Roshi, and he called me and he said, he's American. He says, I understand you're depressed. And I said,
is he Californian?
Yeah. I said, yeah, I suppose I'm not feeling great. He goes, I want to speak to the voice of depression disowned. And I went, okay. And he said, what's it like to be disowned? And I went, depressing. And we had a dialogue with that aspect of me. And it's interesting because many years ago, I remember getting my heart broken as I go back to the hypnotist that I interviewed. And I thought, I never want to feel bad again, so I'm going to learn techniques to make me feel good. What I didn't realize is feeling good and bad is part of life. So it isn't one constant rah-rah. And so, I also, of course, the other thing is, sometimes, it can just be a simple piece of wisdom from like my mother or from my wife or somebody like that. For example, my friend Mikey Neal, who's a brilliant life coach, he said to me a few years ago, he said, he goes, again from California, I noticed, he goes, you date some really beautiful women, right? I said, yeah, I suppose so. He says, but you don't like them. I went, no. I said, but what's that got to do with it? They're hot. He went, no, stupid thinking, stupid. And I said, okay, what do you think I should do? So he said, think, who do you love to be with? Who do you like spending time with, right? He goes, and who do you feel very attracted to? So I put these two ideas into my subconscious, went off into a little trance, and it drew an Excel spreadsheet, and it went like that. It went, Kate. And Kate
in your brain.
Yeah, in my mind, in my imagination. Right. And I went, huh! Because Kate had been my assistant for years, and she ended up running the companies and everything. We worked together, and she's a beautiful woman. And I went, this is very awkward. I can't, this would be unprofessional. My mother had said to me, she said, are you and Kate? I went, no, I can't, Mum, because, we work together. Anyway, one night we were sitting in my kitchen a few weeks later, and we'd had a couple of bottles of wine. And I said, so tell me something about you that I don't know. And she said, I love you. And I went, I feel the same, So sometimes it can come from, it isn't necessarily remedial, although, at times I have felt really stuck. And I try and figure it out myself. And if I can't, I go and ask somebody else. And I go, what would you do about this? Or I want you to, help me with this. Give me a bit of advice. So I'm very fortunate in that I'm surrounded by some really good people. And also, because life's been good to me, I try and help people as much as I can. I've never charged anyone for therapy in all the years I've been doing it. I ask them to give a donation to charity. And I work with, obviously it's reported when I work with famous people because they go and tell everyone. But most of the people I work with are just regular people. Like yesterday, I spent yesterday afternoon working with a guy with serious PTSD who's, this is a hero soldier, who's put himself in harm's way, so we can all sleep safe at night. And he's come back, not physically wounded, but mentally scarred. And so I feel, firstly, I enjoy doing that. And because I've spent a lot of time honing it, it's easy for me. What's a few hours for me and will be a lifetime for him.
And you never charge for your services?
I've never charged.
They always
anybody.
Donate to charity.
Yeah, a couple of times people have said to me, I have got to do, no, I can't have this, I feel uncomfortable. And I've said, well, I don't know, endorse my work, that would be really nice. And so they've publicly gone and said, Paul McKenna, help me. And by the way, I love that, that's great.
That probably comes back to you tenfold, though, when you just give all that away. I mean, do you believe in giving out good energy to the world and it coming back? I mean, you lived in California for 10 years.
Yeah, I do believe in it. But last night at dinner, one of my oldest friends said to me, he said, Paul, you seem very happy right now. I said, I am. He said, years ago, I would have said, healer, heal thyself, because I was going through a few challenges. But he said, one of the things I thought also is, you give to everyone else and you don't look after yourself enough. And it's a very good point, you see, because self-care, if I'm not looking after me, then I can't do my job as well. So it's in a way I actually have to book time when I'm not going to do anything, because otherwise, with my ADHD and my busy mind, I'd be doing stuff all day long. So I have to actually book some time to self-care, to meditate or work out, or just do something really just simple, walk the dog in the park or something.
Yeah. Tell me about that time in the noughties, and then you moved to LA for 10 years. But, for people that don't understand, I mean, kind of pre-internet and pre-YouTube and pre-search function, there was only so many movies in town, so many books, so many television shows, and you were on a lot of them. And you were on a lot of people's minds, and you were hanging out with celebrities doing this thing. You're out in LA, you're living large.
Yes.
And now that you've seen that in perspective of what you went through, what did you learn from that time, both good and bad?
Well, I think it's a great question, Brian. I was very ambitious, and I've really been very focused on achieving. In fact, I'd say as an overachiever. So, going to Los Angeles was like going to Lourdes for me. It was really fantastic. I'm in a town of overachiever egomaniacs. How fantastic!
So they fuel you. Because you get inspired by them and you want to compete with them.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of like attracts like, I think. It's the law of sympathetic resonance. If you've got two pianos in a room and you hit a C chord on one, the C chord on the other vibrates. So I'd wanted to live and work in the United States. I'd gone in '95 to work for ABC, and I had a smash show, and then there was some politics. And the show got taken off the air because the president of ABC thought, hypnotism was brainwashing, or something like that. And so I went to New York to play on Broadway for a while, and I still really wanted to get back and work on American television. And then I thought, because I've been going back and forth, I need to, build it and they will come. And it was actually on Simon Cowell's advice, I decided to buy a house and be there, location.
Even before you got the opportunity.
Oh God, yeah. I bought this house, and I woke up after 2 or 3 nights there and had a full panic attack, right? And I went, I have moved house, job, country in the last 2 weeks. What the hell have I done? And then I was talking to a friend of mine. He went, no, you wouldn't be human if you didn't. This is probably quite human. And of course, very soon I landed a fantastic deal with Discovery. I then did a book deal. And so business was good. But I was also, because there are a lot of Brits in LA right now, we've invaded in the same way we did in the 60s with the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Pink Floyd and Genesis and Elton John and so on. So we the Brits, either scripted, non-scripted, in front of the camera, behind the camera, in television is cool. And so it was a very good social scene. And, I'm quite a social person. Years ago, I loved going to nightclubs, and, I did all the things a young man would do. But it was a few years ago, I was in a nightclub, myself and Ryan Seacrest, and we were sitting there, and we were the VIP table and champagne.
LA.
In LA. And I thought, I can't wait for this place to close so we can go home and have a glass of red wine and a conversation. And so I knew then, and I've gotten a little older. So I think LA was the right place for me. The person I was at that time. Okay. And even though I had a lot of pleasure in my life, I don't think I was entirely happy. And I just wanted the more, the bigger, the more status, more money, more power, more fame. And that's temporarily satisfying. But that's pleasure, that's not happiness. Happiness is really the backdrop, the emotional backdrop to your everyday life, right? The landscape of it. And so I did some work on myself because, again, one of my mentors, Dr. Ronald Rudin, the creator of the Havening techniques, a brilliant MD and a PhD in neuropharmacology, smart guy. He said, Paul, I think, you got some things you might want to deal with there. And East Coast. And,
East Coast, yeah. Jewish,
that's right, yeah.
No.
Kind of speaks a bit like Woody Allen. He talks like that.
Okay.
Sorry, Ronnie, if you're watching. And anyway, so he said, I think you might want to deal with some of those early issues in your life. So anyway, we went and did it. And
I talked it out. Sessions.
No, he actually did the Havening. He went, go
and
find the worst times in your life and knock them flat, right? And bingo, I felt real good. And something changed. And that was when it happened with my wife, when I got together with Kate. Okay. And I suddenly thought, because Kate is not life at 35,000 feet and red carpet like me, she's, I would say, rather a grounded person. Okay. And so, it moved away from being relentless goals, to more a life where I live my values. So love, laughter, happiness, creativity, making a positive difference to the world, loyalty, family, those sorts of things. Okay. If I can tick the box of those every day and say, Did I feel loved? Was I loving towards people I love? Was I creative? Did I feel like I've achieved something today? If I can tick those boxes, then my life's worthwhile. And so, it's interesting, things like that first cup of tea in the morning, and also coming home to see my wife and my dog, and stepping through the front door, or just sometimes sitting and having a conversation, or just watching the movie but with the person I love now is what makes my life feel complete. Whereas before it felt like I was endlessly on a treadmill. And so even though I'm pro goals, and I'd say more direction, because without a direction, it's like getting in a boat without a rudder. You could end up anywhere. Right. I every 10 years decide this is the direction of my life, and I'm just teeing up the next 10 years, and it's looking nice.
All right, and will those have specific metrics?
Yeah.
They will,
Yeah, but they will and they won't. Sorry.
Okay.
It used to be, I must by the end of the year, bam, right? And now it's, over the next few years, I would very much like to, spend time socializing with people I love. I would like to, I'm enjoying this podcast I'm doing at the moment. So, meeting and talking in really interesting ways with interesting people. I like doing these motivational events, where with several hundred people, I turn people's lives around, and I leave people feeling great.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit sort of psychology rock star, that. But also, I kind of like to just slow it down. And, I have a comfortable couch and Netflix. And, that's quite nice to sit and, I quite like watching these binge TV shows,
What's your favorite show?
Cop show. I'd say my favorite's probably The Shield. That gritty American cop show. Okay. But I love some of the old ones like Kojak. There's...
Who loves you, baby?
Exactly. I mean, the thing about the 70s was, for me, is, I love the music of the 70s, the glamorous disco, the punk rock, but also I like the fashions and everything. I like many of the TV shows like the Kojaks, things like that. But the world was a simpler place. And that I kind of like, even though I like the technology of now. And there was also a whole load of really awful things about the 70s. If you think back, there was homophobia then. There was all sorts of things that we've gotten smarter about now. But
but you have the nostalgia for that simplicity.
Oh, I do, and also it's the music of the time. I mean, I grew up listening to Led Zeppelin and the Who and the Beatles and Pink Floyd, and so all I wanted to do was be a radio DJ.
You don't miss the parties in LA?
Do you know? No. I mean, we had a dinner when I was back last week. We had a dinner party, and that's very much talk to people. I find it fascinating. Whereas when I was living there, I used to think I had to be at like 3 things every night. I had to be in the mix. I had to be doing it. And wow, I liked it. I liked the buzz of it. I find all that a bit tiring now. And also, it's not that I think it's a bad thing. Occasionally, I quite like going to some glitzy thing. But I got a feeling that it's going to be a different pace of life. Well, in fact, I know it is. We'll be spending more time in the country. British countryside's real nice.
Stunning.
Yeah. And so I got a feeling that it's a log fire. It's maybe another dog. It's, it's kind of, instead of having to wake up each morning and go, right, how do I conquer the world? It's savoring it. It's more contentment. That's what I suspect.
Okay, so the podcast is an extension of that. It's called the Positivity Podcast. You got some great names so far: Simon Cowell, Tony Robbins, Gary Lineker. That's going to continue. You're going to do what, 1 a week of those, and into your old Rolodex, or
that's
people
right.
you don't know?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, at the moment it's well, some of them are people I know, and also I'm about to contact a load of people I don't know, because it's been such a hit. I can now say, look at all these names of people who've done it, and and also and I think I'm hoping that they might find it interesting to sit and talk for 30 minutes in a non-journalistic format, in a more the basic gist of it, Brian, is how do you do what you do, and what's your success mindset, but without actually asking that question directly. Right. So going round the houses and asking lots of different questions that lead you to understand how people recover from setbacks, how they look at. So basically, when you listen to the podcast, you go, oh, I see how Simon Cowell looks at the world. I see how Warwick Davis views the world. I see how Paul Oakenfold, how he goes about making a record. How interesting.
Yeah. What's been your most coolest moment or the surprise that was revealed to you by one of your friends? Because the beauty of a podcast is you can kind of ask things and have conversations you wouldn't even have over a glass of wine, because it's kind of everything's amped up a little because there's a recording device.
That's very true. Do you know, I'd say, and I was going to sound like an evasive answer, but it's not. Many of the people I've known for 20 years or so, and yet I never knew half the stuff that they come out with. I went, wow. I mean, so some of it's really sort of in the sort of minutiae, the small stuff. Like I said to Gary Lineker, how come you scored more goals than anyone else? He went, he goes, I wouldn't chase the ball. I'd look at a space where I thought it might end up and run to it. And 9 times out of 10 I was wrong, but that one time, bam, I knock it home. So his strategy for scoring goals is interesting. I said to Warwick, what's it like living with dwarfism? He says, well, I don't know anything else, do I? So, to me, it's just normal. And he said, sure, I have to reach for things, and but this is how it's normal for me. I thought it was very interesting. When I said to Simon Cowell about, when he talked about how he'd had a setback early on in life, in business, and that had made him even more determined to succeed. Rob Brydon, who's Welsh comedian, as you probably know, he was saying how when he'd started out, he was doing a sort of a load of Welsh jokes in his little nightclub, and somebody went bah, and somebody else went bah, and they all started going, and he was so embarrassed he left the stage, and he thought, I can't do this, I can't become a comedian. But the next day he woke up and he went, I'm going to show them. And I had this conversation with Tony Robbins, and we were both talking about this, saying, how is it? Because I got a school report that said I would never amount to anything.
You did?
Yeah. So when I had my first #1 bestseller book, I wrote "fuck you" in it and sent it to my English teacher. And
I've heard that a few times from guests.
I know. Well, it's childish, but it's very gratifying. And so I said, what do you think it is that when some people have some crushing event happen to them, that they never recover from it, and other people go, right, I'll show you, and it makes them even stronger. And I think we came to the conclusion that with some people it's just in their character.
I think so, right?
And to some extent it might also be environmental, because if you are continually told that, say, you're a winner, you're an achiever, or you're lucky, right? People who believe they're lucky, usually they're statistically luckier, but also that's partly because they see opportunities, because their perceptual filter is set up differently. Right. This is what the scientific research shows. This is not just my view on it. Okay. And that usually comes from people being told so even when bad things happen, they go, oh, that was lucky, you had a close scrape there, didn't you? And so luck doesn't have to be winning all the time. Luck can be being resilient in different and challenging situations.
Right. And so you think some of it's born, but some of it is the talk you do yourself, and you can set yourself up for more winning situations.
Yeah, I would say I go along with the palm readers. This is what you're born with, this is what you do with it. And so if you're born with oratory skills, let's say, or you happen to be in an environment where you develop that, you could be an Adolf Hitler, or you could be a Martin Luther King. I mean, my take is everybody knows the difference between right and wrong. Sociopaths just don't care. And psychopaths, they actually enjoy doing things that hurt other people. And so being a sociopath is probably another word for being a bit selfish, right? Yeah. So we all know what's right and wrong, but occasionally we do things that are wrong. And, and then hopefully we learn from those things. I hope I have. I'm still in the process of learning. In fact, I think the older I get, the more I realize I don't know, really. When I was young, I knew everything. I was like such a cocky young guy. Now I go, I really don't know that much, but I'm prepared to roll up my sleeves and get stuck in and find out.
You know a lot of cool people in a lot of cool places, whether it's producers or actors or CEOs or royalty, all that stuff. A lot of people would die for your Rolex and your connections. A lot of people are always saying, how can I get someone like a Simon Cowell to mentor me and all that? Yeah. How do you think you do it? I mean, I'm guessing it's maybe because you're really generous, with your time, and you try to help people with the first interaction, but this doesn't happen by chance, people want to be around you. What is it?
Well, I think I'm lucky for a start. And I'm really interested in people. I'm fascinated by them. And all my life, people have found it easy, it seems to me, to talk to me. And, it's just one of those things. I don't consider it a burden. It's a blessing. It's really good in what I do. And, one of the things I found is early on, because a lot of people helped me, even when I was a radio DJ, people were just helpful to me. And mostly that is. And I couldn't understand why, because there was nothing in it for them. But I assumed that maybe either they liked me or that it was good for their self-esteem. If I said, hey, how do you do this? I'm just really wondering, can I borrow from your wisdom? And if somebody asks me, says, I really need you, if I don't know, I'll say, look, I don't know. But if I do, I feel quite good, helping them and telling them. And I can't help everyone every time with everything. But often if I think I know the right person for them, then I'll send them in that direction. And so, I don't know. There's a friend of mine who is an astrologer. He sadly's passed now, a brilliant astrologer. And, he kind of believed that, not that everything's fixed, that, you have destiny moments. That when I rang him up once I'd got into a relationship with my now wife, and I said, Graham, I'm in a relationship. He said, yeah, started 3 weeks ago to the day, didn't it? I went, yeah, how the hell do you know? He goes, well, what do I, oh yeah, of course. I said, how's that work? He goes, well, the chances of this were well expected. So I think some of it, might be that maybe I was born to do what it is. I always knew actually when I was young that I'd be famous. And I thought it was going to be in the field of communication, right? And so that's why I assumed it was a radio broadcaster. I didn't realize it was as a hypnotist and as a broadcaster, I suppose, to some extent, and author. So I suppose in some sense, maybe there is a little bit of destiny in there, although I firmly believe we create our own destiny, our own futures, or certainly we have free will. We've got freedom of choice. And people often say, oh, but doesn't it take a long time and a lot of effort to change? And I go, I've seen people change in a heartbeat like that. They've gone, right, I've had enough, I'm never doing that again. And they don't. Or they go, oh, they meet that particular person. In that moment, their life changes. Or, they suddenly have an idea for something and they go, I just know this is going to work. And, we've all had that experience or something like that, I would imagine.